If everyone could just
switch off their
their
microphones, please. Awesome. Welcome along, everybody, to this evening's session. My name is Tim Mannix. I'm with the Sport Wellington crew, so I'm the coach advisor for Sport Wellington. And it's great to have so many coaches on the line, and pretty excited with tonight's session, having Russell Earnshaw from the Magic Academy join us. So, Rusty, welcome along.
Thanks for having me. Hope everyone is safe and well. As I've said to Tim a few times, you're very lucky to have Jacinda as Prime Minister, and we're very unlucky to have Boris. So I'm a bit jealous that you guys are back to sports. So hopefully might share some ideas this evening.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, no, we are excited about being back to sport, and yeah, I think our country has certainly done things a little bit differently around COVID-19 than others, and I think our approach has certainly seems to have helped us get back to the things we like, which is coaching. So it's great to have so many coaches and coach developers on the line, and it's really cool tonight that we're going to, I guess, explore a few ideas and concepts around how we could do things better as coaches, how we could do things differently, and I guess all of it's aimed at helping provide better experiences for our athletes and players. So as a way of getting underway, Rusty, I thought perhaps we might sort of find out a little bit about what got you into coaching, what started you off, where did that happen for you?
That's a good question. Probably very accidentally, like lots of other people, no real intention. I played a bit. I wasn't as good as I could have been. I actually had pretty poor coaching experiences as a professional rugby player. Then someone got sacked and I got given a job, and I can still remember that first meeting and the trepidation / fear. And I guess I had some stuff went pretty well for me, to be honest. And then I guess I just got hooked on it, really. I think I'm a little bit obsessed with people, and I'm probably the same as you. I just want kids to have awesome experiences through sport. It's probably the stuff that drives me the most. And I guess, yeah, I've probably been really lucky along the way to have bumped into some people that have been really significant for me. So people like Nigel Redman, Kevin Bowring, John Fletcher, Ben Ryan. So I just, as you kind of do in sport, you meet some people and they in a really playful way make you realise you don't know as much as you thought you knew, and you kind of grow as well. So
cool, awesome. I've noticed you've had a few of those people on your webinars you've been running with the Magic Academy. So tell us a little bit about the Magic Academy. It's something pretty new. You and John Fletcher set it up.
Yeah, so how it actually originally started, so I was working with the RFU in coach development, and what I was really mindful of was that we might go and hang out with some coaches, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a year, but actually how do we connect people up? So I just set up a sharing site where people could put stuff on and from different sports, and we could just kind of stay connected and chew the fat about coaching and all of that. And then a guy came in and made us redundant, got rid of us from the RFU, and so I'm not too bitter about it. It was the best decision ever made for me, really. And so we just kind of continued from there, really. I work a lot so I actually don't work that much in rugby now, if I'm honest. So predominantly with hockey. So up to 100 days a year with British hockey, football. What else have I done this year? England netball, England cricket, a bit of lacrosse. Bits of everything, really. And so it's just really set up so coaches can be connected. We've got about 4,000 members at the moment. It's quite, and it always slightly, I think once you get beyond the critical mass, then sometimes people are a bit scared to share as much stuff. So people are still sharing. I would love it to be more, but I also get the fear of posting something where 3,999 people might see it. However, it's a really friendly place to be. So no one's kind of, digging into people or anything. So that was the original setup, really. And then probably like everyone on Paul, I'm fortunate. I get to go and observe lots of coaches. I get to hang with them. I learn as much as they learn, 100%. So when you said better, I'm definitely not going to help you out to do stuff better. I might kind of talk about some stuff, and I will learn some stuff as well. So I think it's been so it's almost 2 years since we've been working for ourselves, and it's just been the ride of our lives, if I'm honest. Like, I just become even more obsessed with how can we kind of, probably in England a little bit, and I can't comment on anything in New Zealand really, is break the rules around coaching a little bit. We've probably gone a bit serious about it. The adults are behaving like idiots on the sidelines. The kids are feeling a huge amount of pressure. We've got a bit of a mental health crisis on our hands. The joy of sport sometimes doesn't look that joyful for some of the kids or the adults, quite frankly. So I'm really surprised at how unenjoyable some of the adults are finding it. So I guess that's been my driver.
Yeah. Oh, cool. What you mentioned there is something we've still started in New Zealand as well. Sport New Zealand are driving a program called Balance is Better. So they're trying to get us to rethink sport a little bit. Some of it's broken, needs a little bit of adjusting just to make it a better experience for the participants. And so that's really part of where Sport New Zealand are trying to create a bit of a movement there and a bit of a shift. So it's been quite...
Just something to think about is if we started again, and we said, right, the most important thing is the development of children and their well-being, then it may not look like it currently looks, would be my view. And I think we just need to, so I think, was it New Zealand netball I saw the other day, who've got someone on their board who's a teenage girl who's a 18, 19-year-old netball. So that type of stuff, like, why aren't we asking the kids? Like,
exactly.
Let's find out what their experience of it is. So yeah, I mean, you guys will be doing some cool stuff as well, I hope. Well, I know.
Yeah, I think we are. There's a lot of coaches that are doing some really cool stuff, and a lot of sports are really starting to get innovative. I think, like a lot of sports, we see our participation rates dropping at times. So, I think, what can we be doing differently to, make people fall in love with sport and enjoy the experience while they're there?
Yeah, and I think we've also got I mean, COVID's obviously got some tough stuff going on, definitely over here. We got almost 70,000 excess deaths. So it's created lots of kind of autonomous people who are hanging out in their gardens and having fun. It's what does it look like when we go back? Please, let's not go back to what it looked like before, quite frankly. So I think it gives us some opportunities as well to kind of press the pause and the reset button and have a go again.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we get underway with a bit more of a chat around some of the topics we've planned to look over tonight, if I could just let everybody know that we will be running the chat function tonight. So if you do have any questions at any time, please put them in the chat function and we'll do our best to answer them. And if we don't get onto them, please feel free to chase us up and we'll try and track down some answers from Rusty or wherever. So please do make it interactive with your questions. Rusty, we spoke a little bit around learning environments. You guys have been exploring a whole lot of different things in that area. What when I say the word learning, or two words, learning environments, what comes to mind for you? What are you thinking?
It's a great question. I think it's some stuff that I guess will spread through my stuff is probably love, care, how people feel, stretch. So high stretch, high support, like how are we helping people get better? Co-creation, so how are we co-creating this environment as opposed to it being kind of led by the grown-ups often? How are we getting feedback as coaches? I'm always thinking about you can almost like see it, feel it when you arrive. So what do people's faces look like? How engaged are they? I love sometimes pretending to stop sessions early. Okay, we're going to finish now, just to see if people go, no, we want more. We want more. I'm like, I'm not sure, So almost this place that, yeah, people just want to get to. They have a huge amount of choice. I'll definitely talk about choice a lot. So obviously, Laura Mossman in Australia, be a big fan of her stuff around flavors of motivation. She talks about like the number one behavior that coaches can dial up around motivation is choice. So I'm not going to say to my daughter necessarily what time do you want to go to bed, because she would go to bed at 3 a.m. every day. But I might say, do you want to go to bed now or in half an hour? So probably choice will be a big part for me. Like, one of my biases is that people own their own development. Now, clearly, I need to nudge sometimes and support and all of that stuff. I'm currently working with a business, and they found it quite hard to start with. Like, well, where's the program? Where's the leadership program? Well, I'm kind of following the energy a little bit and responding, and so that freaked them out a bit. Yeah, so all of those things, and I guess lots more. I think the key thing for me, and maybe it's my bias, so apologies, is that like, you just want people to open the front door. You don't want to have to go around and break in and sneak through the back to get into the basement. We've got to find ways of coaching people, supporting them. So one of the slides I've got later is a guy called Matt Turner, played England Sevens, and I would still say I haven't worked out how to coach him. So I think it's it's on us as coaches really to work out how to support people and stretch them as best we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Why do you think you haven't worked out Matt? What's what's going on with him?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I would always want to know people's story. So what got them to where they are? What's the ouch moments? What's the iconic high moments? And understand that. I probably it's always tough, I guess, as well, when you're in you're coaching a group of players. So if there's 20 players and one player's taking up 50% of your time, then at some point you're thinking, right, so what's the opportunity cost of this, I guess? And yeah, I probably didn't make enough time away from the pitch to get to understand Matt. Yeah. I would look at his behaviours without understanding the stuff that led to those behaviours.
Yeah, it's quite an easy thing for coaches to do. I'm guilty of that in my days early with my coaching. I think just seeing how people behave and I guess almost making a bit of a judgment call on who they are as a person without really knowing them. So it's
yeah. So a good example is Gabs. So Gabs Ibitaye been involved with England, plays for Quins, and he turns up late to training. So all the coaches go, well, he doesn't care. However, he's feeding his siblings. It's a single parent family. He's just got 3 buses to get to the training ground. I mean, no one's making more effort than him. He's actually the person that cares and puts in the most effort, not the least. So I probably didn't get to that stage with Matt. However, I'm not coaching England Sevens anymore. He's retired from playing, so we'll never get those moments back, unfortunately.
Yeah. Nice. Rusty, I know you've prepared a few slides. I'm not sure whether you want to jump into anything right now, or we just go through with a few more questions. What suits you, mate?
I'm cool. Shall I put some slides up and kind of chew the fat on them?
Yeah, that'd be great.
See if it comes up. Can you see that?
Not yet. Oh, hold on. Yep, we've got it now, Rusty. That's all good, mate.
Cool. And mate, if anyone has any questions, definitely just jump in. And I've probably kind of first slide's always like probably just to maybe explain my story. I've got a wife and 2 kids. I'm not saying all coaches should have kids, but I think it helps. It's definitely changed me as a person, probably been the most significant thing. I'm obsessed with people, so this is incredible, really. I studied maths and economics at Cambridge a very long time ago, in the early 90s. And I went back 2 years ago, and the barmaid Blanca was still there. I mean, that's the stuff that gets me excited. Yeah, I mean, I'm missing the pitch at the moment. I love being on the pitch. This is Kalisha in township in Cape Town, and it's been one of my favourite days of the year going over there. We just missed it this year because of because of COVID, but just some amazing people doing amazing stuff. And this is part of our under 18s gang. And so, yeah, I'm just kind of obsessed with people and teams, really. I've explained a couple of these. That's Matt Turner, top right. That's the house. I think they need to, we need to find ways of of them opening the door rather than us breaking in. I think this is me playing back in the day. It looks weird to me. It looks like another lifetime. You can see the cap. Josh Cromfeld was my hero. And I guess all those experiences would shape you. The stuff that I really think longitudinally, this was a note from a girl. She was the toughest girl I taught at school. I was a teacher for 2 years. She sent this 3 years later on Facebook. It blew my mind. I was probably the teacher she didn't want, but I was definitely the teacher she needed. So that's also the learning environment stuff for me, is the wants and needs stuff. Best coaches, their ability to notice and respond is what sets them apart. I was really lucky to do a podcast the other day with Scott Robertson, and I would probably put him alongside Phil Jackson at the moment as almost like a super coach. You know, the people that can connect with their players, that tell stories. I'm pretty excited by some of the stuff that those people are doing. I'm always thinking two things, like, how can this person be the best version of themselves, either a player or a coach, and then what'll make you wobble. So actually starting to explore the stuff that makes you wobble, and how can I support you with that. And then this number really is, so I was with Johnny Wilkinson at an England camp recently, and he said, I think I'm starting to understand the mental side of the game. I think I'm about 1.3% of the way there, which is like, oh my days, which makes me about 0.9. And I am genuinely curious, obsessed, want to learn more. Every time someone tells me something that I didn't know, I'm like, oh my days. So I'm kind of excited about just the infinite game that is coaching. This is some of the themes I think you might see when we kind of talk about stuff. So probably how I exist in lots of these worlds is the naive expert. I don't know much about hockey. I don't know much about netball. However, I would probably have a reasonable understanding of people and coaching. Some of this other stuff we chatted about, the reason I don't want to talk about good, better, must, mustn't, always, never is I just don't, it's completely contextual coaching. So this is my version of events, I guess. A couple of things on here. One is, again, my biases, and also it's the connection. This is Richard Capstick, Peter Walton, one of the best coaches I know. This would make sense to Richard Capstick. This would be a meeting over condiments talking about lineouts, one-on-one, feel really casual. This for me is a beautiful learning environment. COVID's given us a lot of chance to do this, and I often ask this question, you know, where do you do your best thinking? And people will say shower, toilet, waking up, falling asleep, walking the dog. And I think COVID has certainly over here given us a chance to do this. And then the last thing here really is, like, I'm really influenced by the people I coached. So this group of girls, the under 18 England girls at the Europeans, like, taught me so much about coaching, quite frankly. Sorry, go on.
Tell us a little bit about Peter Walton. What do you like about his coaching style?
Oh, he's like, just cares so much about people. He's actually a farmer, so he would. I think he thinks they're all his sheep, and they're all slightly different, and he wants to get the best out of them, and he wants them to be happy. But he would just be really like caring, like him. And so the two people I've seen that do this, this kind of mentoring-y type individual conversation, the best are Peter Walton and Richard Hill, who played, if people know much about rugby, played in the back row for England and the Lions, and they just care about other people. Like, it's actually a challenge for me. So I don't know if people use insight. So I would be relatively low green energy, and people often go, "Oh, you're caring and I'm thinking it takes a lot of energy. Like, Waltz can do this all day. I can't do this all day. and be genuinely responsive, real good listener. Yeah, he's a good guy, and on top of that, would have, you know, he's a gigantic man. He played rugby for Scotland. He actually looks quite scary, but he's just not. So I love it. It's, you know, and in our sport, that's actually quite rare over here to have coaches, especially who coach the forwards, who are like Peter Walton. So yeah, that's probably Waltz's super strengths, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
So look, just, yeah, and I guess I think this has always been useful for me to either, if I'm co-coaching with someone or somewhat you're hanging out with people, just to go, look, here's the stuff that's kind of important to me. And if you watched me coach, this will be the stuff I hope you would see. So number one's pretty much non-negotiable for me. Like if I'm watching a coach, and I think it's always the starting conversation really with any coach that I'm working with is, you know, what is good coaching to you? This top one, you know, would I want me to coach my kids? And that's not kind of necessarily all pink and fluffy or however people describe it. That's high stretch, that's high support, that's knowing the kids' names, that's giving them, I'm obsessed with coaching individuals, if I'm honest. I'm less bothered about the big picture stuff. To be honest, I'm less bothered about the sport. I'm more bothered about the person. However, I can coach the tech tack if I need to. Box set coaching, so probably tied in with the other stuff. So I would want them to get really excited when they arrive, and you know, we're straight into action. One of the things we playfully do at Birmingham City is the wedding speech. So we take bets on the wedding speech. How long will it be till the kids are running around after the coach has spoken? It's come down significantly since we called it the wedding speech and took bets on it. And the end bit is almost like, how do we create that sense of they want to come back for more? So it's really easy to shut a session down and go, look, great session, see you next week. It's possibly more skillful to go, you know, we're going to start next week's session with 3 or 4 scenarios. Do you want to go away and kind of, you kids, you know, decide some, and we'll start the session with it. Then we get some conversations and some stuff away. Karaoke, because I'm terrible at singing and I need to feel like I'm about to do karaoke, so I need to feel a little bit nervously excited. Waggles and wobbles is my language for stuff going well, stuff going not so well, and I'm always mindful of, like, probably, you know, if these kids, let's say it was these kids and it's their first ever session, I would want probably 80-90% of stuff going well. If I'm coaching, you know, Marcus Smith, Tom Curry, then actually it's probably a little bit less, because I want them to be, you know, having to find some solutions to some stuff. Scaffold pauses will make sense in a bit. So the thing that's changed my coaching the most in the last kind of 12 months has been a lady called Amy Price, who's done a lot of work on video game design. I call it gamification. She calls it video game design. We have debates. My chairman down. So I've had to find ways of scaffolding in pauses, and the reason being that the video game design stuff, they pause rather than I pause. So in a session at the moment, probably 80% of the stoppages would be them now, not me. Whereas before it was 100% me, to be quite honest. That's been a big kind of challenge for me because they're not used to it. So if I coach the under 9s, then to be honest, they would want to pause the game every kind of 3 seconds. When I coach the older people, so I coached England touch over 45s, they didn't even know how to use a pause. Like, they were really struggling. So I've used this kind of on the pitch and in education. It's been the biggest change for me. And I use it in coach development as well. So actually, you know, let's have a discussion around pauses and how many you think we could use in today's session, and why you might come and find me. What I don't want is me going to them all the time. Like, no one wants the coach developer stood watching over you and initiating all the conversations. Actually, we want to feel like it's a both ways thing, and I would want to lean it towards them, if I'm quite honest. I would design.
So
Sorry,
with the
go on.
pauses,
Yeah,
is it a case of framing it up a little bit with the players prior, or is it just
yeah.
leaving
So
it pretty?
it's a great question, and actually, so yeah, I might scaffold it by going, look, imagine in the next 10-minute game, both teams have two pauses. Give me some reasons why you might pause the game. And so they might go, oh, Rusty, the opposition. So if I'm coaching boys, they always say, the opposition are about to score. So they'll stop. Yeah, of course you will. It might be we want a tactical conversation. It might be actually we want to stop freeze and we want to move some of our players into better positions. And so we would just talk about that stuff, and then I might need to nudge them. So I might go, because the reality again is there might be some kids that don't pause, but I might be having an individual conversation with a little Sarah and going, look, what have you noticed anything? Is there anything you think would be, oh, do you want me to pause it, Sarah? Cool. Okay, freeze, pause. Awesome pause by Sarah. So I might have to scaffold it in to start with. I mean, especially with the younger ones, they're all over it. Like,
Yeah.
well, the first I coached just before COVID, and one of the kids paused as the opposition were about to score, and the kid next to him went, "Oh my God, I love pauses." And it's about metacognition, and we'll maybe reference it later, but it's just getting them to think. Now, that's not to say I'm not going to pause, but it also gives me a sense of what do they find meaningful? Why do they pause it then? Why, so I've done it a bit in individual sports as well. So, like cricket batting, as opposed to feedback being from me to you, actually, you pause when something's kind of up and you want to have a conversation about it. So the pauses, and then just making sure I design mistakes so that people have to kind of work through it. How can I would be a question I would use a lot. How can I give you better feedback? How can I be more impactful? How can I support you today? Maybe even questions like, what one thing could you tell me that would help me coach you better? So I'm just trying to find out what are their, how I can support them the best I possibly can. And then the last one, and I kind of put this in because I work a lot in football. And what I notice in football, and I'm sure it's not like this in New Zealand, is people are really, coaches find it very easy to put people into boxes. And also to, for example, compare them to other kids, even though they're nothing like them, they just look a little bit similar. I mean, they've got two completely different stories. So, he can't do this, he can do this. She can't do that. She isn't mentally tough. Right, what does mentally tough mean? Well, she isn't it, type thing. So and I probably see it in education a little bit as well, having been a teacher, and with very little evidence or no evidence apart from in maths to support setting in the classroom, we still continue to do it. And that's not for some people that might be okay. They might go, awesome, I'm going to prove them wrong. For other people like my wife, they might go, I'm a bottom set mathematician, so I'm going to behave like a bottom set mathematician. And they make comparative judgment. So I'm just always mindful that I try not to do that. Now, clearly it's easier said than done.
Just coming back to your how can I question, do you ever get players that don't want support from the coach? How do you deal with that? Is that you've just got to wait? Is it another approach?
Yeah, I mean it's yeah. And once again, I'm doing it at their pace, really. If I'm honest, I do a lot of one-off sessions, so it really challenges me around like connecting with people as quickly as possible, and connecting them with each other. So the other thing I would do a lot of, and we'll reference here, is like the peer-to-peer stuff. Teenage Brain, Sarah Jane Blakemore, I mean, they quite frankly don't care that much what a 45-year-old man from Middlesbrough thinks. They definitely care what the cool kid in their class thinks. So also using their peers and scaffolding that in to give support. So I think we spoke a bit about it, Timber. So when I've been lucky enough to coach some players who are rock stars, like in terms of how they play, but also as humans. So people like Tom Curry and Marcus Smith, I could go, look, you've seen the session. Who do you think it would be struggling today? And How do you think you could help them? And actually, that's almost, for me, that's almost the better way of doing it. The other way I might do it is like, look, put a whiteboard next to the pitch. Everyone just put on a cool challenge or challenge for someone else, or, you know, get into little groups and work out some stuff you want to do in your little groups so that it gives you a bit of a focus in there. And that also allows me to do that. With our coaching cards, I sometimes use them because they'll also scaffold conversations, because the other thing is the kids might just go, I have no idea what you're talking about, Rusty. I don't know what feedback is. So it's, yeah, I think it's, and I'm sure the coaches can all imagine great examples they're doing of this. Often for me, it's the stuff that happens before training that then allows it to happen in training. So it's the conversation on the way to the pitch, it's the whiteboard, it's the putting people into little groups where they check in on each other. It's having a conversation with Marcus and Tom and saying, look, who's going to find today's session tough?
Yeah. Awesome.
So, yeah, and by the way, I'm not doing it all the time correctly. I'm definitely getting some stuff wrong. And then probably this is an example of how I would try and maybe disrupt some people's thinking around sports. So I did a session for school the other day. I said, I want you to design a session based around this: meaning, meta learning, imagination. And they were like, so this was 2 deputy heads, head of sport, head of all their other sports. And they were like, oh, okay, cool, Rusty. Well, what's meta learning? So I was like, oh, well, I think it's this. And they said, oh, what's imagination? I said, well, what do you think it is? And they were like, well, I don't know, it can be a confusing word. And I was like, well, it's on the front page of your website. So all of this stuff. So what I see in lots of sports, probably my start point is, what's the end in mind? What's the stuff we're coaching? And if you say it's this, then do something about it. And I love the guy who went, oh yeah, actually meaning, yeah, that's on our well-being thing. It's the M of PERMA, and I was part of that, but it was lost. So we put the words on the wall or the words on the website, and we forgot about it. So I often notice this. So you go into environments and people are just kind of on a treadmill. One thing that's happened is COVID has given us time to reflect and pause and go, hang on, are we in water or are we not in water? So I would kind of always start with end in mind. For me, I see lots of this in sport. We kind of do stuff because we've always done it. There's no fence. People just continue to do it. In my sport, rugby, it's the yellow tackle bags. They're nothing like a tackle. In football, it's the metal men who bizarrely don't move. Apologies, because my daughter does netball. In netball, it's the fact that at aged 7, when she's about, I don't know, 3 foot tall, she's throwing the ball into a net that's about 4 times her height. So, and you can lower them. So, so that's the stuff that I would almost want to go, look, let's break the rules. What are the rules, and let's break them. And I'm sure you could all think of examples in your different sports. Some kind of common ones in rugby in England are the coach calls the huddle. The coach speaks first, and often for the whole huddle, and definitely last. We don't have any interaction with the opposition beforehand and have a conversation about what are we going to do to make this an awesome day for the kids. We actually just compete against 2 other coaches, which is weird, really. So a lot of stuff around that. The coaches entirely design practice, which once again, I mean, the question I often ask coaches is, would you have been a better player back in the day if you knew back then what you know now? And they all say yes. And hopefully some people are nodding. And I then ask them, and who was preventing you from doing that? And it's the coach. So the co-creation part's really important for me. And I'm definitely would be, you know, there'll be some individual coaches on here, and it happens much more in individual sports in my experience, because it's even more heightened, isn't it? You're actually really responding and helping this one person versus often the great mass.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just quickly, so my end in mind is this. So there's some tech tac stuff going on, but actually I'm thinking about these skills, and I think they are skills, and I'm thinking about these skills as me as a coach as well. Probably the one that, you know, I'm really focused on is decision making for me as a coach. Am I making kind of good decisions around leaving stuff? Where am I standing? What about my interactions? All that stuff. Creativity is one that probably gets a bit of a bad rap, if I'm honest. So in rugby especially, they'll go, it's, you know, it's this kind of Sonny Bill Williams type. Creativity is actually solutions to problems. So if you were to say to coaches, would you want great problem solvers? They would go, yes. And so the way I describe creativity is, so I was with Mike Beale, who's the Rangers manager, and I said, why didn't you make it as a player? And he said, because at 18, my left foot was 18 and my right foot was 3. And it's a great way of asking players about, you know, how old's your right hand, how old's your left, what are you going to do about it type of thing. I actually think that's a coaching problem. So if you're in an academy and you're strongly left-footed, playing on the left, it's going well for you, you're not moving over to the right and kind of not looking so good. So the coach to support you on that journey, and we're going to go and spend a bit of time over on the right, I'm here to support you type stuff, would have been critical and might have been. However, he's doing a pretty good job as a manager and coach, so maybe he's happier. So I would always start with the end in mind. What are the skills we're trying to do? And I'm sure people would have this either for their organizations or for their schools. From that, I would then go, how are we going to design learning? So we have an array of practice designs available to us as coaches. And I guess my question to people to think about is, imagine you have 100 eggs, where are you currently putting them and why? So, and the and why bit is important for me. So what I see, and let me talk a bit about hockey. So I work with British hockey. I see loads of this. Almost all sessions start with 2 people standing still, passing the ball to one another. They never do a one-touch pass, and there's no movement. That doesn't happen in a game of hockey.
Yeah, hi Michael. Can I get put through to the technical team?
Oh, not sure what happened there.
Got it.
Thanks, Megan. Carry on, Rusty. Sorry, mate.
Simi's on mute, if you just tell him.
Oh, Rusty, you're on mute.
My fault. Yeah. So what I was saying is there's trade-offs associated with this. So if I do lots of block practice, I get lots of goes. There's often not much decision making, and it often doesn't look like the game. So that's the stuff that's happening in hockey, where actually they're probably getting 95% success. It's too easy for them. And actually there might be another version to do. Once we get to the game, so in most invasion sports, you then start to get the tactical stuff. However, you get less time on the ball, but you also get to practice off the ball. So off the ball is significant. So in rugby, the highest a player will be on the ball in our sport is 5%. If you are a winger and it's wet and windy, you will touch the ball almost 0% of the game. So your ability to influence the game off the ball is important. So I think what I'm trying to say is there's pros and cons to stuff here. There's, you know, why would I, why wouldn't I? What I see is lots of people just doing stuff like this because they've always done it. I see people doing small-sided games without intention, but then also people struggling around, how do I coach in a game? So what are the coaching skills? Because this looks really chaotic. And what I then find over here especially is, like, if there's 3 or 4 of us in our coaching team, then when so let's say Tim steps in and coaches, then we all stand and watch. And actually, when we start talking about learning environments, then actually we're possibly missing some interactions. Now, what I'm not saying is the reverse of this. Like, we're all coaching and we're all telling the kids loads of information, and actually their heads are going to explode. So a thought experiment I sometimes do with coaches is, look, you've got an hour session, there's 4 of you, you're allowed 14 interactions in the whole session. What's going out, what's going in, what's the most important stuff, what's the fluff we can get rid of? And there'll be a lot of fluff. So I think my point is, this is my start point really, good practice design. We'll talk a bit about this. I am almost entirely up in this top right hand corner now. None of us will have experienced gamification. To be honest, not that many of us have even experienced like 2 teams having different rules, or different scoring systems, which is the reality of the match, you know, or one team knowing some information the other team doesn't know. So, and then just alongside this, I think it's useful to design some skill games. So we've got different games. We've got an All Blacks game there, which is based upon transition, because the All Blacks are the best transition team in the world.
Do you want to share your screen again, Rusty? It's just dropped out.
Oh, has it? Sorry.
Yep.
Technical. I'm not a technical whiz kid. I'm apologies. Can you see it?
Yep, it's popping up now, mate. That's great.
Yeah, it's having some skill games and then also co-creating. So this is a session I did at Worcestershire Cricket, and the players, the parents, and the coaches are watching the kids design a session. And interestingly, the kids all picked one card that was common, make a player laugh or smile. The parents all wanted to give the cards that were built around the resilience of cards, and the kids wanted to do the creative stuff. They wanted to try stuff out. So what I probably noticed was that kids were more willing to try stuff out than coaches. Parents were really keen on the mental skills of the game being well supported, and also the kids wanted it to feel like, you know, they were connected with the coaches. Interestingly, we then asked the kids to go most impactful moment in the session, and we got the parents and the coaches to do that as well and see how aligned they were. And one of the lads who now plays county cricket, which is a reasonable level, said, when the coach asked me about what food I like, and clearly no parents or coaches had that one. And so I was like, okay, why did you put that? He said, I don't know, I just really like the fact that he was interested in me. And so I guess when I go back to, would I want Rusty to coach my kids? Like, being interested in kids is really important, like seeing value in them. And I had that just before Christmas. I was stood with a parent. I was watching some coaches and stood with a parent, and I said, what have you noticed? And he said, oh, I'm only watching my son. And I thought, of course you are. So I'm thinking of all of the kids and the stuff that's going on and the coaches, just watching his son. I'm like, is he having a good time? He's like, yeah, I think so. He looks, you know, but that's the reality. So yeah, that's pretty important for me. So, so that would be my start point really, practice design. My next kind of, I did put a video together. I'm happy to share it. That kind of, I might have to turn the sound down on it. So this might be an example of the sound there, just because I've got some ridiculous music on it probably. So we just use this practice a lot. I can coach lots of stuff through it. This is indoor in South Africa. Various different defenders, various numbers of attackers. So some people might join at different times, varying width, varying scoring zones. And for those of you that don't understand rugby, there'll be some rules within this game that basically mean it's coaching depth and your ability to fix attackers. I'm making it competitive. The guy there who's got goggles on normally stands on a wing. He plays wing. We're basically spending some time on improving his decision making in these areas. He doesn't do it that often. And with his goggles, we're also focusing on his ability to share information. The coaches aren't really stopping it. They're kind of noticing, observing. And then the other thing, I mean, so maybe have a think about this. So see how long you can watch this without looking at the ball as coaches. So you're only allowed to look off the ball. Fair play if anyone hasn't looked at the ball, because I've looked at it already. What I also would say is that we're coaching way too much on the ball. So these players here, their ability to influence the game off the ball although this has led to a try, is critical, really. So we just got some different scoring stuff. I think one of the scores on this one is if you can make a defender fall over, you get 10 points. And so we're pretty playful with that type of stuff. And once again, we're all looking at the ball. Actually, these people are really important as well. So I'm happy to share that. So just having some little games, some little practices, and some bigger games, because the other reason I do that is, and I'll reference this in a second, is because we spend too much time explaining stuff. So this is a coach at Newcastle Falcons Academy, England under-20s, great coach, Jimmy Ponting, legend. And he realized that a fifth of his sessions was him explaining stuff. Whereas actually, if you say, we're going to play the All Blacks game, do you want to start on level 3 or level 4? I've given choice. We're mastering a game that's going to help us be really good. So we're not flitting between game to game. And it's probably taken me 10 seconds. So practice design first, my coaching behavior second. And I guess I get people to look at this and I might go, look, design your own. So what you think you would be doing. I might say, what are you doing more of? What are you doing less of? The stuff that people say is they're always surprised by silence. So I guess it depends what you're doing in the silence. None of this is right or wrong, but the ability to notice and think about where you stand and who you interact with. So maybe this might be actually just standing next to a co-coach for a period of time or moving away from. The other thing they say is he's not that funny, but this is quite funny for Jimmy. The other thing they say is this is low. Actually, if you'd seen Jimmy a year ago, this would have probably been this. I'm always kind of thinking about the stuff that's getting in the way of coaching. So often it's this, it's hustle, it's refereeing, it's scoring, it's feeding the ball. It's really hard to feed the ball and be a good coach. I work at Birmingham, and one of the challenges I had with the coach was we're going to spend 20 minutes, both of us, looking at who are the top 3 scanners off the ball, and we're going to check in 20 minutes and see whether we're aligned. And he was feeding the ball, and he said, "Oh, Rusty, I can't feed the ball and do that. So why are you feeding the ball? Just put some balls around the pitch, have different numbers on them. They're worth different points, and hey ho, you've suddenly got some tactical training as well." So I guess it's just, this has been really useful for an awareness point of view. The other thing that is true with coaches, and there's a really good Chris Cushion talk on the GAA website, or it's on YouTube actually, where he talks about coaches would be about 20% aware of this stuff. Players would be about 80%. So when I ask players, what's your coaching cohesion like? They know all the answers. When I say, look, what's a session look like? Yeah, we probably spend 50% of the time in huddles. The head coach speaks first, and the assistant coach. They don't ask us questions. Any questions are usually yes, no answers. So this is a real good awareness piece for me, and I'm sure people are doing it. This is Birmingham City's version of it, their first iteration. So the analysts looked at how much ball was rolling, how many interactions were individual, small group, whole group. In rugby, we love a huddle. We speak to everyone, we speak to no one. At no point in a match of rugby do all the people have the same information. So why are we doing it in training? And then also, this would be important for me because I need to be more mindful of the players I don't interact with. So the Matt Turners of this world, what am I going to do about it? So my kind of base layers would be like practice design and then my coaching behaviors. And this is a cool way that we can also, there's loads of ways you can get information, the coaches on this. This is a heat map for a hockey coach of where they stood. So you might just, one of the things I do a lot is give a coach just a white piece of card or paper and they just write down their thoughts on, or go look, write down your 3 or 4 most impactful questions. When did you see people genuinely thinking and problem solving? Or so there's loads of ways we can raise people's awareness of this stuff, which I'm sure people are doing really well. Okay, this is cool, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
This is just quickly, so if I just do this, and then if there's any questions, Tim, this is from the England analyst Kaz Morgan, and actually there's some real good kind of nudges here around learning. So for me, the why is important, speaking their language and having a common language as opposed to really confusing messages. I do think storytelling is, I know storytelling is a really good way to connect people up. I'm sure people have seen the theming that the Crusaders do. I think it's pretty cool. How can we get people to think as opposed to doing told? How can we prime the brain? So what for a session to get people thinking? Is it a game of human north, whatever it is, to get the brain going as well as the body? And then they've done a bit of research around anything in groups of more than 4, we then get social loafing. So if you're kind of having a meeting and there's 50 people in the room, as I'm sure we've all done, possibly now, switch off. And so actually, how can we keep people engaged? And that small group stuff has been something the England team have been doing a lot of work with. Did you have some questions, Ken? Thought you were going to ask me something.
Yeah. I'll jump onto one first, Rusty. You've spoken about gamification, and I know it's something the Magic Academy have been pretty strong on. And would you be able to just share a little bit more on that, because some people may not be familiar with the approach?
I'm going to go into it and talk to you about it. So I'll give you a kind of a real quick. This is why for me. So start with the why. This is why I think gamification is a game changer. So it's actually about players thinking. They have autonomy, and this is all the stuff you would see if you play computer games or your kids play them. I've got a 15-year-old son. He's definitely not revising for his exams. If it was gamified, it would be. Problem solving, it'll be normal in school soon, don't worry. It allows this, so differentiation. So because you have superpowers, so if you think of Super Mario, if you're at the back, something lands on you and helps you. If you're at the front, you probably get a banana skin. Probably a really good example I saw of this, I was in the Isle of Man coaching, and one team kind of got to their superpower. And I said, what do you want? And they said, look, Sarah's doing really well. And she's new to rugby. I didn't know this. And it was a mixed boys and girls team as well. And they said, look, she's doing really well. We'd love her to have more opportunities to show what she's good at. So Rusty, if you could adjust her, this is 11-year-old kids, mind blowing. If you could adjust the rules so she has 3 touches instead of 2, that'd be pretty cool. So I'm like, Sarah, you cool with that? So what we have is someone who's new to our sport able to access it even more, peers telling her what she's good at, and then some additional stretch. I'm like, oh my days. I'm like, Christmas has come early. So these are the reasons why mastery, because of the levels. So what I notice in coaching is, so the hockey coaching I alluded to earlier, they start on level 1, they stand opposite each other, they hit the ball to each other. It gradually builds up and they get to something quite good towards the end of a session. They then go back to level 1 in the next session. So I think we're missing out on all this bit below. So what level do you want to start the game on? Level 5, or actually, Rusty, can we go back to level 4? We'd really like to master it. Or do you know what? Should we have a go at level 6 today, lads? We've had a bit of thinking. This is what we think level 6 should be. We've level 6 is with no communication, because actually we want to heighten our scanning even more. Creativity, because they just come up with stuff I would never have dreamt of, quite frankly. So it's helping me as a coach. So loads of good examples of this. I'll give you a quick one. Joe Bellingham at Birmingham City. So they get to their superpower, at which point, it's football, and football in England, everyone's moaning at me. I'm the referee. They're 14-year-old lads. They think it's cool to shout at the referee. And they say, can our superpower be, Rusty, in the next 10-minute game? If we dive in the penalty box with someone near us, you'll give a penalty. And if they moan about it, then they'll go and do the 2-minute skill challenge as a sim bin. So I was like, I'm not that keen on diving. However, I see an opportunity here. So I said, cool, that's awesome. I love it. Can you guys do me a favor? At the end of the 10 minutes, you're going to feed back to them on their behavior. You're going to tell them what you noticed about it and what the impact of it was. And so I kind of soldier through for 10 minutes of players having a go at me. And then we get peer-to-peer feedback on this isn't helpful behavior. So I then say, look, how many of you have got a solution to this? So, I mean, people would have seen like gazing, like the All Black stuff, or, you know, I always say to people, just smile, it releases all the nice stuff in your body and the referee thinks you like it. And how many of you have got solutions to this? So 4 kids put their hand up and about 16 look at them like they're from another planet. But we then have a discussion around, well, what do you do and how does it work and why do you do it? And which is a pretty higher order conversation for 14-year-old lads, quite frankly, who are peer pressure in an academy where selection and stuff happens. So that's why I love the gamification stuff. These are the things. So if you look at Amy Price's work, she would talk about these kind of five areas, and I'll show you a section in a second. What's the mission? So the mission might be actually communicating. For me, I will co-create the mission. We might discover the mission partway through. I'm not a mega fan of learning objectives. I think it ties us narrowly into some stuff. The levels which I've referenced, I've also played around with. If you do stuff, you can knock the other team down a level. That's pretty cool. In the same way I've been playing around with negative points. Superpowers, which I've referenced, so they can either be an individual accessing the game or a tactical problem for the opposition. Pausing, which I think I've referenced. I'm scaffolding it in and I'll show you how. And then banking. So banking is, do we want to stop here? So if you think of a game of, let's say, netball. So I think netball because I always want people to be able to move positions. We got Super Fives over here, which I think is a bit more dynamic than. So in netball, I think there's only a certain number of people can score, and I definitely recognise there's more people that wish they could score because I've spoken to lots of them. And so you might play a game of netball where if you score the net, then you can turn and play the other way, and the next net would be worth 5 points. But if you didn't score the next net, you'd lose your 1 point. So we'd have a moment in time where people would see a picture and go, what's the best decision? Do we think we're going to score or should we bank it? So that's how banking works for me. I've also been playing around with, if you don't bank it, the opposition get it, they take your point off you, as an example as well. And then currency is something I've been using in between games. So in the Birmingham session I described, I'd say, right, we're going to play 4 games. Every game you win $10,000. And here's a menu next to the pitch of stuff you can buy for various amounts. So for $10,000, you might get a bench referee for 5 minutes, and you can choose when to use him or her. You might save up and get $20,000, and their goal becomes a mini goal. So actually, it's really hard for them to score, and we get tactical problems. Or you might say in netball that actually our net gets lowered down, or whatever it is. But I'm just trying to introduce tactical problems, and I'm also trying to introduce the psychosocial stuff of, well, hang on, they've got an advantage. How are we going to deal with it? How are we going to problem solve? Why are we so agitated about it, type thing? So if I give you an example, and I can share this session with you. I'm GoPro'd up. This is Danny Newcomb. He's head of coaching at Oxford Brookes. And so I just wanted to put this on because he's smiling so much. So this is how I did the session. And once again, my view of the world. Other people have done it in different ways. So I allowed terrible language, Rusty. And the players took the warm-up. So they had 10 minutes where they did that. I was just curious, so I wanted to see how they warmed up, who took the lead, what they did, what they got excited about. Fortunately, one of the guys taking the warm-up works for a company called Boing Kids. If you get a chance, have a look at their website. It is awesome. And he did a warm-up way better than I ever could, so that was helpful. And during the warm-up, I was then starting to kind of look at people and think, well, what would be a useful mission today? I'm trying to look at individuals. I'm always thinking plus minus. What would be a stretch? Where might they need support? What are people doing off the ball? How are they problem solving? How are they sharing information? And then I was going to gamify it with choice, and I'll explain that in a second. Once in the game, I'm then thinking of how can I coach individuals? Lots of it was psych stuff. Interestingly, there were some frustrated people, and it led to some real good conversations. I was still going to use coaching port. So the kind of skills I would use a lot in games. So people often go, well, what do I do when a game's going on? So I would use a second ball a lot. So I would think about where I introduce it and why. I might say, look, stop using that ball. Here's a ball here. I would use replays. Do you want another go at that? Would you make a different decision? Actually, if we put another defender in there and make it even harder for you, let's see if you could do that. I would use freeze a lot as opposed to huddles. Freeze, cool. Close your eyes. Tim, how many people are outside you? How many are in the backfield? What have you noticed? Who's giving you some good information? So I would try and understand what you've noticed. I would use I would use pauses as well. I then had a decision to make around what huddles would look like. So once again, traditions of huddles are, as I'm sure you can all imagine, they're pretty traditional. So I decided that if the opposition called a huddle, or actually if either team called a huddle, you could send a spy across. Now, the spy was then only allowed to tell once the game got going. So once we went straight from a huddle back into the game. So if they had information, they then had to share it. I would almost never, although if you watch this video, I will give information to people because it's coach development. I will almost never tell everyone all the information. It would be very rare for me to tell everyone the information because it doesn't create enough problems. So I might actually tell someone to go pretty rogue and see how his teammates react. I might tell someone to support some people and see what the impact of that is on her teammates. I might tell one team, this is your scoring system. I might, because that's the game, that's the reality. And then I was also curious about what they would do when the ball was out of play. So in rugby, it's about 50% of the game. It's important and we don't coach it, in my opinion. And therefore, and they're going to adapt it. What I also did is create 2 co-coaching cards. So if I can just show this video quickly, sorry, Tim.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I
no,
think
cool.
it explains it. This is England training by drone. This is England rugby, and I'm really curious. So my kind of practice design, my coaching behaviours, then it's co-coaching. So co-coaching is really interesting to me. So it needs to be intentional. Otherwise, if me and Tim coach together, we might say 20 different things to the same kid and nothing to another kid. This is pre-Scott Wisemantle and Neil Craig coming in, not a coach. Steve Borthwick refereeing, not a coach. 3 coaches. 7,000 square meters on a rugby pitch, and they've managed to find the same area. And they're all looking at the ball. And one of the most important things is, where are people scanning? They cannot tell you where any of these people are scanning. In fact, if this Mike Brown asked for feedback on his positioning and he didn't go to the World Cup, then he wouldn't be able to get any. So I'm being harsh. However, I see this a lot. Actually, what I see a lot in English rugby is these people aren't even on the pitch. What I see in hockey is hockey positions, umpires, as opposed to, so Max Caldas, who've done a bit of stuff with, who's Dutch Olympic hockey winning coach, he would actually referee on the pitch. He would have a big pocket full of balls and he would use second balls really skillfully. Off the ball, really important. This is an opportunity to score. No one's calling for it. All the defenders are looking at the ball. So this is the best. This is a World Cup final team, quite frankly. And still, I still think we're scratching the surface, if I'm honest. So being intentional around co-coaching. So sorry, go back to my thing. The reason I say that is I basically had 2 co-coaches. Now, I know what I'm good at. I also know what I'm terrible at. And so I created these 2 things really. So this was really to support people that were finding it tough. Catch people doing stuff well, stretch them, check in with me. Reason they check in with me, I'm rubbish at it. So someone fulfilled this function in the session. Another one was this, a skills master, have a positive interaction with everyone, have a skills stretch. So this person had an array of balls and said, look, what do you want to do? Do you want to go at this type of stuff? And once again, at the end, when I asked about their best interactions, it was this stuff. This is the gold for me. So practice design, my coaching behaviors, co-coaching, all of that sorted. I actually then think we can have some magic going on, if I'm honest. I just recently, recently, it's actually January, was in Boston, and I had some skills cards. I had about 150 coaches. I had co-coaching cards. I said, who wants to be co-coaches? And it was a group of 9-year-olds, and the kid said, can we be the co-coaches, Rusty? Which clearly disrupted my thinking of, right, that's weird. Like, hang on, that doesn't, the 9-year-old, whoa. So anyway, so I was like, cool. So cool, you can do it on one condition, it's a secret mission. So you don't tell people what's on your card. And we had one kid whose job was head of happiness. So he decided he was going to high five, fist bump people doing stuff well, and he was then going to set them a challenge. He was also the best player. So that helped because peer-to-peer stuff. At the end of 20 minutes, I said, what's been your best moment in the last 20 minutes? And no one mentioned me, which is a little bit sad for me. But I was pretty pumped for the kids, if I'm honest. So anyway, so this is, and it's quite hard to see this whiteboard. I just took this off the GoPro. So we designed a game, 2 teams. It's a 3-touch game. And I just got both teams to choose a way of scoring in attack and defense that was worth, I think, 1 point. Now, it wouldn't be the try necessarily. It might be if we fix a defender. It might be if we get an interception. It might be if we give really good communication and it leads to something. Whatever it is, they choose it. Both teams have 2 pauses and 2 replays. So I scaffold in and I go, cool, why might you pause? Why might you replay? Cool, you comfortable that you can use them? Awesome. Now, I've also played around with these costing. So you've got 2 pauses, but it costs you a point for each one. Or 2 pauses, and if you do a really good one, then I'll give you a bonus 5 points. So depending upon how I want them to think about pauses and replays, I'll do that. Now, I also would always ask at the start, do you want to play the easy level or the hard level? and then I can use that to immediately get people competitive. So Tim's picked the hard level. Oh, wow. My God, Mark, your team, Tim thinks his team's better than you. He's taking you on in the hard level type stuff. Are you? And then also I can start to go, cool. And are you guys cool if I mean, it sounds like you fancy a challenge, Tim. Are you cool that I set some challenges for you in the session as well? Yeah, I'm all in for challenges. Of course you are, Tim. So I always start sessions like that. I just got into the habit of it. And then it's only in football that they choose the easy one. And then I go, oh, if only you lads played rugby, seriously, because rugby always picked the hard one. But that's cool. If you guys are comfortable on level 1, that's fine. And so you get, so the hard one takes more points and you get your superpower later. Now, what I would say with the superpower is, generally, they're pretty good at it. I've had a couple of teenage boys, football again, apologies if anyone's from football, who've gone, oh, Rusty, when we get the ball, all their players fall on the ground and we score a goal. Oh, wow, that's going to make you really good at football, isn't it? So I would always have some options in my head. So I would always go, look, cool, I get it, teenage boy stuff, it's hilarious. However, do you want this or do you want this? Which one do you want? You got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we'll get it done pretty quickly. There's almost like this. I don't really have an imagined future for anything. So I'm pretty cool to go off in wherever we want to go. I'm generally thinking about the individual. So, and I'm happy to share. I've got this session and another session, GoPro'd up. Please be kind to me. Both on coach developments, one in Canada, this one's in Oxford Brookes, just talking about it. And where I think the magic is this stuff, and I hear the peer-to-peer stuff I've spoken about, but is the individual interactions. And just a couple here that, so Foxy here has got the target top. You get extra points for your team if you get a shot on the target top. So he should look like he's been mauled by a lion. He can then nominate other people. So I'm giving it to this person because they would really benefit from it because actually this session's quite easy for them type stuff. This one was around how do you want feedback and recreate a famous scenario from your sport. So this is Ball of the Century. And they wanted to kind of be able to rewatch their stuff. This one was for coaches. So I gave this kid a camera. He was injured and said, I want you to use the camera to get some feedback for coaches. What he actually decided to do was to video kids after interactions, especially things like half times. So this one was class because I was like, he said, oh, so tell me what you remember about half time. he couldn't remember anything. It was 60 seconds after.
Yeah.
Couldn't remember it, let alone do it. So that's where storytelling, that's where thinking about your impact before something. So I guess my challenge, I'm always looking at co-coaches and going, why didn't they speak before the huddle? Like, there's a huddle, and now they're all saying different things. And some of that stuff, they only needed to tell 1 or 2 people. And yet, they've all just spoken for 12 minutes. I'm not sure that was, I'm sure there was a better use of our time. This one, old way, new way. I'm sure people are using it. AIS 2004 paper. I'll give you an example from a rugby point of view. Kid doesn't have his hands up, drops the ball a couple of times, bit of a theme. So my sense is old Rusty would go, mate, come on, get your hands up, be a T-Rex, move on, next job, Rusty's nailed that one. And then he'd slow his hands down, everything in. All right. So old way, new way would suggest that you agree a new way, and then you spend time doing bits of both. So we're going to do 10 minutes of the old way. With Rusty, it's doing my head in now. I know. We're still going to do it. So we're going to do 10 minutes of the new way. We're going to go back to old way because your brain needs to process difference. People will be doing it. They might not be calling it old way, new way. A good example is when we take away communication as an example, and then we allow it, and then we take it away, and then we allow it, and the brain is able to then start to process difference. And probably this one has been really useful for me. So this is like using the clickers to give people information. So this was with a goalie. This was a 13-year-old goalie, and I said to her, what would be useful for me to, like, I've got some clickers. Is there anything I can help you with? And she said, I've been working on my communication. So we decided that we keep a record of how many times she communicated and then how many times it led to something successful. Because one of the things in goalies is, so this is why I tend to stand with the goalies. I mean, no one stands with the goalies in hockey. If there's any hockey coaches on here, they'll know. I actually asked the players of Birmingham City, we got 3 co-coaches, how do you want to use us? And they said, don't stop the game, start with a positive. And the goalie said, oh, and could some of the outfield coaches come and speak to me, please? Which was good awareness. So with this one, we kept a record of how many times she communicated. So at this point, it was 10. How many times it led to really good outcomes for the team? 5 points, because I wanted to connect her up with the team. Often the goalies are kind of on their own. And so I can share that with the outfielders and go, look, she's giving you some real good information. It's only 5 times, 50% at the moment. Do you think we could get it up to 60 type stuff? So for me, this is the magic, Tim. And just, I use this slide just to show, like, seriously, like, this is Tommy Marshall. There's, these are some of his coaches, some of his teachers, some of his S&C, his analysts, his teenage boy, his medics. And there's quite a complicated network around kids at a time when their brains are developing. And so either we've got to be really on the same page, especially when there's transitions across to different environments, or we upskill Tom with the ability to have conversations, which would be my preferred route. Clearly, we would want to be really aligned, but also for Tom to be able to go, well, hang on, Rusty, Tim said this. Does that mean the same as when you say this? No, actually, no, yeah, Tim's right. I've used the wrong word there. So, yeah, so that for me, the magic from me really is this individual stuff. I think the gamification really helps me bring to life all of these things. And then I guess the last thing for me is just, I'm always trying to make stuff sticky. So on the 24th of December, I ran 21.9K. I've never covered that distance in my life in a day. I'm not Santa, and I wasn't trying to use up enough energy so I could eat well. I wasn't shopping. But what I was doing was trying to beat my wife. And
Yeah.
I'm really competitive, so understanding what'll make stuff stick. Jimmy Ponton and Aidan use an elastic band. Ed Hall, I'm happy to share some of his stuff. He would go, what physical objects could you use? Aidan's always trying to remember to to stretch people. So he's really good at, a bit like me, noticing people do stuff well. Something else I've changed, I would look at Steve Rolnick's stuff. I used to go, I really like the way you did that. You know, that's just as we've been training it. So I would catch people doing stuff well, connect it up, and then stretch them. Love the way you did that. It's just like we've been practicing it. Be awesome if you could do it 3 more times. What I've now started to do is try and take away the I. So that must have taken real courage to do that, as opposed to them becoming reliant on me, but also then remembering that's an amazing opportunity to stretch someone. This one's quite playful. This is England 18s. All the coaches and staff put down the stuff they're working on, and the players keep a record of how we're doing on it. That's a tough place to be, trust me. Yeah. When Fletch came out of a meeting and Ben Earl said, Fletch, you said you interrupted 4 times and used the word definitely 18 times, and it wasn't definitely, then that's a tough place to be. So I think that's most of our slides, to be honest.
No, brilliant.
I feel like I've been talking for ages.
No, Rusty, you have done a pretty massive shift there, and geez, we've covered a fair bit of information and concepts, ideas. It's been a brilliant session there you've shared on. Just had a question in the chat quite early on, and it was around learning and it's from Debbie. So how do you know someone has learned? What's for Russell Earnshaw? What does that look like for you? What are you noticing when you've seen learning take place?
It's a great question, Debbie. Thanks. And I think that I'm probably on a journey from being the fixer that thinks that learning is this really short-term thing to actually it's about transfer. And ultimately in sport, it's about transfer to the game, quite frankly. So we probably became more skilled at trying to connect up the dots over longer periods of time. So especially around their individual work. So you've been, this has been your area of focus. This is you practicing it in a small group. This is us putting it into training. This is it happening in a game 6 months later or 4 months later, or whatever. So clearly, and I guess the England kind of pathway is really like focused around the highest potential players. So it's actually about people like Marcus Smith, Tom Curry, the youngsters. And so we can be really intentional with a small group of players around their needs. How are we developing them? What does that look like over time in games? So if we're doing something that's, we're spending time with a hostage negotiator because it's actually about how they communicate with players under times of pressure, then actually it's the mic in a match 6 months later that shows that there's been some impact. I think it's clearly harder to do in a group. I'm generally like, I just want them to want to come back next time. So I guess that's my main focus, but I'm probably mindful over longer periods of time of being better at noticing and checking in with them on the stuff that they've been trying to get better at as well. But it's probably the holy grail, isn't it, to go, well, I've seen this, this due to this. I probably was the same as everyone, put your hands up, be a T-Rex, cool, he's done it once, job done. Why is he not doing it anymore? Type stuff. So yeah, I think and that's where for me the co-creation stuff's critical, really. I mean, they've got to, like I said, the stuff with the business, like they've got to have, it's got to be meaningful for them. Like it's got to be something that they're excited about as well, not me forcing stuff upon them.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Rusty, just a quick one around the gamification. For a coach that perhaps hasn't gone into this area before, where might you start? What might be your 3 tips for starting off? Or, there's a lot of things you can obviously adjust in a game and rules you can bring in, and you can change the space, the task, the participants, all that sort of type thing, the equipment even. What might be the good starting point for someone who wanted to have a play with gamification?
Yeah, and I'll give you a story first, obviously. So I've been doing it for about 12 months. I've probably done 200 sessions, and they don't all go well. Same as any session, quite frankly. The feedback I'm getting from looking at kids and grown-ups, by the way. So actually the most interesting feedback was England 7s. We need to train like this all the time. We're currently not. I'll take that as a seal of approval. But I did one at ACS Cobham, and a kid came up to me afterwards, a 16-year-old kid, American kid, said, "Oh, Rusty, can I give you some feedback?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "That's the worst session I've ever done." I'm like, "Oh my days, I'm dying." And he said, "Let me tell you why." So my dad's in the military. He's always told me what to do. I've never had to make decisions. That was too much for me. I was like, oh man. Because the other thing for me is, I know that, and it was quite a big group, it was about 30 kids. I will miss out on the kids that are struggling. So that's why a co-coach is really important for me to scaffold in, or to have someone in the group that does that. And so I was dying. But it was really useful for me. And what I've probably done since that day is, so this will lead on to some of the advice. Drip bits in. Don't do it all at once. So actually, we're going to play levels. So we're going to add levels to our training. We're going to start on some shooting, and we're going to start on level 1, level 2, level 3. So I did it a bit with netball, where I think the top level was you were 7 yards away, and you had to shoot with both eyes closed. But there was levels to achieve some stuff. My other piece of advice would be kind of co-create it with them. So don't necessarily shock it upon them. Don't necessarily use your language. So they did a real good job at Newcastle Falcons, where they based it around Call of Duty. That was something that resonated with the kids that they were coaching. And so they had like prestige badges and things like that, I don't know, apparently that's in Call of Duty. So co-create it. And at the same time, you can also like signpost it. So you can go, look, we're going to try something new today, and it might go wrong. I'd love your feedback during, after, anything like that, because we want to try some stuff out. And then I guess the other kind of piece of advice is like, just be patient. So none of us have done this. Like, none of us experienced it. We weren't coached like this. The stuff behind it is all sound theory around learning. Quite frankly, the video game designers, they're clever people, to be fair to them. So just be patient, probably over time, but also in sessions. Like, we got a white piece of paper that I gave to a coach one of the first times we did it. We did it at Caterham School on a teacher development day. And what we did was we split the teachers into groups, and they designed games and they coached others. So it was quite safe. We weren't coaching the kids. It was, and I got one teacher to write down what he was feeling on a white thing. He wrote, "Okay, I'm really stressed. This looks nothing like rugby at the moment." He then wrote, "Did they even listen to a word I said? They appear to be doing nothing of the sort." And it's just this list of, and it was just really interesting to unpack that list, because the reality probably was, if he was in his own environment, he would have gone back to what he used to do then. But because it was quite a safe practice environment, so once again, where do we practice our coaching? We had Eddie on the other day with a group of coaches from around the world, and he said, and they're all coaching at the top end. And where do you practice your coaching? Silence, So there's Super Rugby coaches, there's Prem coaches. Yeah, where are you practicing? So give it a go. I've actually, quite a few of my friends who are coaches have been trying it in their gardens with their kids at the moment. So the kids are creating levels around stuff, and if they get to this superpower, then Dad will do this, and they're all like, seriously, our kids are so engaged. I've done a couple of sessions with schools where I've got them to gamify the classroom, and I do think it's the future. I mean, some people are already doing it, quite frankly, and there's a couple of there's a good TED talk on it that I'll send as well.
Awesome. Hey, Rusty, I've got one more question here from Sam Rash, who's a rugby coach over here, and he's coached a bit of sevens. Firstly, he's asking, why did the English team want to train more like, using gamification more? What was their why? What did they make that comment to you?
And it's interesting, Sam. So when I coached with England a long time ago, I was actually doing it. So you guys probably don't know it. There's a TV program in England called Going for Gold, and it was the heat is on, the time is, and it was this cool program. And basically you built up a score. The minute you got a question wrong, you went back to 0. So it was quite Jeopardy, if I'm honest. And we used to do a defense session where you'd start on your own line, and it would be one phase. So you get the attack to one phase, you start again, level 2, level. And I didn't know banking back then, so I didn't have banking in, but you got through as many levels as you could. Now, you had to go forward because you started on your own try line. And anyway, so I went back and did a pod recently with a couple of the players, and they said, I was talking to them about gamification. They said, "Oh, do you remember you used to play Going for Gold?" I was like, and because I wasn't that skilled as a coach then, I didn't recognize that they were loving it more than I was. And we only did it like 5 or 6 times because I was probably not as brave as I am now. So anyway, just a bit of an aside that I think I was doing it back then, because so the reality of the game is, so if England Sevens play New Zealand Sevens, we kind of have an idea of how you play, but we don't know all the information. So we've got to work it out. I love the fact that they problem solved, because I would say if you took, well, it's true, if you took Tom Mitchell and Dan Bibby out of that team, you would lack problem solvers. With England Hockey in their recent under-18s camp, I said, look, be honest, 24 kids here, how many of them would you bet your life on as problem solvers? 3. The reality is our games don't include enough problems. And the other thing is it creates psychosocial stuff. So Dan Norton was in the session. So Dan Norton was like, his head was gone completely. And we can then decipher that. I love making Dan's head go a little bit. And so I did it in cricket. We had a gamification session, and this just to show the scoring system in cricket, the impact. So we had, so my view is like, so you got 2 batsmen. Are they different? Yeah. Are they working on different stuff? Yeah. Why have they got the same scoring system? So we had 2 batsmen. We had one who, Ben Charlesworth, played a lot of county cricket, scores a lot, red ball cricket. A 4 was an 8, 6 was a 12. Anything less than a 3 was a minus. He was on minus 15 points after like 5 minutes. Like, his head's completely gone. He's international. He'll play international cricket. But then we can start to decode that. Now, there's no way that him normally in the nets, he's normally just hitting the ball and it's cool. And then the other guy was interesting. So the scoring system that he came up with was, if I'm out, then Ben's score gets halved, which I was thinking, like, that's quite cool that you do. And he was like, oh, no, I wouldn't want to half Ben's score. Like, I would feel terrible about it. And so we just had this conversation around, like, so how can we create more moments that feel like the game? The reality of gamification for me is it feels like the game. And that's what their feedback was. It really feels the closest thing we've done to a game.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, because it probably answers Mark Harris's question here is we're doing this gamification approach, and that is it feels like the game is, so in terms of the transfer into the game proper, it's so closely connected. Is that what the concept is?
Yeah, it is. And actually, and then we're scaffolding in around going, well, so when are the pauses in a game? So we've suddenly got players that are problem solving around scrums, around penalties, around kicks to corners. And so, yeah, just probably trying to spend more time noticing that as well. So when we talk about learning, I mean, it's also this stuff. So it was in this, a lot of the ball out of play stuff came from, it was about, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago. Ben Youngs, I was when Eddie was, so probably 3 or 4 years ago, Ben Youngs broke his leg against Italy, and there was a high cam on the pitch. And Italy were all problem solving, and England were just messing around. And they actually weren't problem solving. It actually happened in the World Cup final, where even where England split into forwards and backs, Ben Youngs went with the backs, and the line out, he thought it was a drive, but it came off the top and he knocked it on. And just that cohesion around how are we solving problems. So what it's also led me to do is be quite intentional around scaffolding some of that stuff. So hang on, if we're going to have a huddle, like, what 2 or 3 things will I see? What will be the principles of your huddle? So, well, Rusty, if someone speaks, we'll all listen. Okay, cool. And what will I see at the end? Like, well, we'll probably agree on some stuff. okay, cool. Do you want me to keep an eye on the stuff, or are you guys cool with it? Or so I've just probably become more intentional around that stuff. And it might even be like just going, so something I would do a lot is go, right, cool, everyone close their eyes. I don't know why I say close your eyes. I always say that, just so they don't see other people, I guess. Cool, we're going to have a huddle in 10 seconds. Everyone shout out what you think the most important thing is in the huddle and just see how aligned we are. And then also go, cool, okay, so we've got a problem where we can't get the ball to the left-hand side of the pitch. 3 seconds, shout out what the call is. 3, 2, 1. Because I'm also trying to see, well, is language the problem? So often language is the problem that comes, that actually we think we're doing a good job. So Marcus Smith goes to Quinn's and there's 16 calls for different kicks. And they're all animals. I mean, he's literally like Rusty. It's like someone's thinking of the kick, they're translating it to an animal, they're telling me I'm translating it like I'm in the zoo, and it's taking ages. So actually what was good intention, but our language and too much of it didn't lead to clarity on the pitch. It actually led to confusion. So I'm also trying to work out what's getting in the way of them problem solving. It might be hierarchy. So it might be actually that, Tim, you speak the most and you're doing everyone's problem solving. So with the England team at the moment, that's Owen Farrell, quite frankly. And so I might just go, look, Tim, you know, today's session would be awesome if you can only ask questions, or I want you to notice who's doing the best problem solving and give them a high five when they do it. So yeah, it just leads to all this stuff, quite frankly.
Awesome. Just one last question here from Grant, and I think it's around practice design. So Grant's talking about, is it still important to have a 50-50 split between skills training and then, you know, gamified games and that sort of thing? Where do you sort of sit around your philosophy? I think you're probably more, I think I know where you're going to go with this, but it's an interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, look, so let's be, so the most unhelpful word in English sport is technique. There is not one correct technique. So if you look at the All Blacks, they pass differently. Actually, they just did a study with Irish rugby and looked at all their principles around how they coach. So catch early, pass, follow your hands, and they're not doing it in a match. So they're actually finding a way. You look at the best tennis players, so a basic of tennis is the forehand. They would all hit it slightly differently. So my view is people find a way. It's about effectiveness. So if I can fix a defender and pass, then I'm all in. I think skills training is the game. Now, but what I'm not saying is that the game is 15 aside. It might be a smaller number game, so people get touches like the one I showed. So we're working on depth, off the ball, fixing, that type of stuff. I'm also kind of mindful of, within a game, I can still do it. So there's no reason I wouldn't go, look, Tim, mate, you've just thrown an awesome left-hand pass there. Do you want to do another 10 with me? Do you think you could do it another couple of yards wider? So having a skills master there, or having it as like a little skill zone next to the pitch. Now, what I would always say is, once again, might be my bias, I would want them to opt into the skill zone, not me to go, well, look, Tim, you're not very good at passing, young man. Get yourself over there and get better. I'll tell you how I think you should pass. With due respect, if any of the kids are as skillful as me, we're going to be struggling. Then you opt over, and that's actually quite an exciting area, but it also transfers back to the game. So we might be playing a game where it's extra points if we score on the right-hand side. So we get some left to right passing, and people are finding it tough, and they might go, look, I'll go over there, and that might then give you a superpower in the game. So Tim's gone over there, he's hit the target 20 times, comes back into the game. If he then does it in the game, then it's a double point try. So I'm always thinking about the connection between the two. I would always start with the game. I mean, if you whenever I do coach development, I'll go get a game going. The adults get more excited than the kids. I mean, the adults are playing game. No, the adults aren't practicing drills. So they get out there, they start playing a game, they're whooping and hollering, and I'm like, so why don't sessions start like this? Like, seriously. And And now clearly we might want to switch the numbers. We might want to underload, overload. That's something else. I mean, if you said to me, Rusty, for the rest of your life, you can either have even or uneven numbers in matches, I would always have uneven because we get some tactical stuff, we get some problems. Automatically, we got less players. How can we play through them? Is there some kicking options as a result? We got more players, actually. We could probably fix some mass and then move it out wide. So I would predominantly be games. However, if someone has a problem and there's a theme, then I want to help support them with it. I'm definitely working out where they are. So there's definitely what I also see. So hockey, they'll say, oh, they can't trap the ball. So they'll go and do, standing still, trapping the ball. Well, they can do that. There's actually, what's level 3 of trapping? What's level 5? Where are they? What's the stuff that's preventing them from trapping in a game? Is it the stuff they did before the ball was passed? Was it their positioning? Was it actually that they probably need to be told, do you know what? Actually, if you just bend your knees a bit more, then that's going to... So I'm not averse to sometimes helping people out by telling them some stuff. It's always more powerful when they realise for themselves. So someone realises, do you know what? I've got to go and work on my left hand. They go over there. I have some reps over there in a playful environment. I come back in. I set up a try in the corner. I'm all in. Because the other thing that we've got to be mindful of, like skills, decision making, all of that depends upon a lot of things. Like decision making depends upon our behaviour as coaches. It depends upon our language. So I often see players that I know are more skillful than they're being allowed to be.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's where we've gone in rugby is to try and take away competition at a young age. I know you've had it in some areas over there, and it was met with utter disdain over here. However, we've got loads more kids playing the sport, and more skillful kids, and happier kids, and it actually becomes challenging once we go to competition. I think it's at about 13 or 14 now, and actually that's where we start to get drop off.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the same story here, Rusty. So some similar challenges. Hey, we're going to wrap it up there, mate. That's been a really awesome conversation. Thanks for your time. We've really enjoyed it, and we'll certainly take you up on that offer of those extra resources you're keen to share with us, and we'll send it out to the coaches that jumped on. Yeah.
Yeah.
When do you see yourself getting back on the grass soon?
Well, as people will know, our country is all over the place. Dominic Cummings is running the country. He's broken lockdown rules, and the Prime Minister's defending him. We've got track and trace coming in today, at a point when everyone's lost all faith in government. So I've spoken to Sport England a bit. They're finding it hard, lack of clarity from government. People are trying to get back on because of the financial side. I think we're probably similar to you in that there's some concerns around kids going back. Sorry, coaches going back. So the kind of voluntary coaches, will they want to be disinfecting balls? And clearly you've got a different context to us. You've got a relatively small number of deaths. We've got tens and tens of thousands. And then also, the kids as well and their fears. And so we've had a couple of your coaches jump on a couple of our things really to help us understand what it's looked like over there, and where people are currently playing around with creative ways of getting back to something that looks a little bit like rugby.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, mate, I won't hold you up. You've probably got a few things lined up today. So thanks again for your time, Rusty. And thanks everyone for jumping on the call tonight. And hopefully you've taken some learnings away that, particularly for the winter coaches, you guys can start applying pretty soon with your teams in the upcoming season. Thanks again, everyone, and all the best.
Thanks, guys. And Tim, happy for you to share my email as well if anyone's curious about stuff.
Brilliant. Thanks, mate.
I'll ping you all that stuff in a bit.
Awesome.
It's a big webinar day for me today. I've got a lot of Zooms going on today.
Nice. Have you done your Magic Academy webinar? Is that already happened? We did
Will Greenwood, Brian Ashton last night, which was good actually. We got good feedback. They were super chatty. Will can talk. So we watched a bit of England under 18 stuff and a bit of the New Zealand semi-final game, and just got their views on coaching and playing and stuff. And Will obviously had done a bit with Scott Robertson with the Barbarians, and Brian's been over and spent a fair bit of time with the Kiwi coaches. So yeah, we just chewed the fat really. Had really strong feedback. I thought it was okay, and people love it because actually people quite like the kind of pundity, technical, tactically, game of chess stuff. So yeah, it was good fun.
Always love listening to Brian Ashton. He's a pretty wise man, isn't he? He's got some great concepts, great ideas.
Yeah, he loves.
He's been there and done it.
Yeah, he talks about one of his things he said on the hockey thing the other day was like, I love to kind of, what's his exact language? Or I love to challenge the notion of impossibility or something like that. And he's just trying to move the game on really. But he speaks, when someone texted me during it and said, "Oh, it's very good of you to invite Brian Ashton on to listen to Will." Which I thought was good. So now it was it was good fun, and we're doing sevens. I don't know if Sam's still on now. We're doing sevens on Wednesday, so we've got Tom Mitchell, Chris Cracknell, and Marcus Watson. So Chris obviously played and then coached in Fiji, and Tom and Marcus played in the Olympics, and Marcus is playing 15s for Wasps. So that should be good crack.
Nice.
So,
awesome, Rusty. All right,
cool.
mate. I'll let you go. It's getting late
mate,
over here, so it's time to.
It's a shame it wasn't in person.
Yeah, absolutely. We would have loved. That trip in April was looking pretty awesome, mate. But anyway, we'll have to wait for another time.
Yeah, cool, mate. Cool. Well, stay safe, and thanks everyone. Cheers, mate.
Cool. We'll be in touch, Rusty. Thanks, mate.
Thank you. Cheers, dude. Bye.
Bye.